It's a pretty mixed time to identify as Scotsexual. Whilst I was never really expecting my petition to get tartan added to the rainbow flag to go anywhere, the Scotland team themselves have been no more supportive of people of my orientation. For every burst of electric light from the fingertips of Stuart Hogg, there seems to be three things that should be simple, simply going wrong. On the one hand, this season capped the emergence of some gorgeous new Scots sex symbols, like Darcy Graham and Blair Kinghorn, but on the other hand, we've seen exactly how quickly Scotland's depth gets stretched thin. On the one hand, Edinburgh and Glasgow both made it to the European quarter-finals and Glasgow to the Pro 14 final. But on the other hand, the Scots bottled it in all three games. On the one hand, Scotland spent the whole Six Nations going the kind of tries that make you want to stand up and applaud, but then realise if you're a man of my orientation, you can't do that. But on the other hand, they just weren't scoring enough of those tries to win games. And then the greatest example of all. On the one hand, Scotland scored 38 points in a glorious free-flowing second-half display at Twickenham. On the other hand, Scotland conceded 31 points in a dismal first half and then failed to hold on to a lead in the last play. No match summed up where Scotland are at better than that radioactive clash at the end of this year's Six Nations. The clan with a thistle above their right nipple play possibly the best, most exciting brand of rugby of any test team not allowed to pick Leone Nakarawa. And yet, playing the best rugby rarely seems to translate into being the best at rugby. In the last 3 years, Scotland have beaten everyone at the top table except the All Blacks and Springboks, but they've also lost to all the Tier 1 World Cup contenders, many of them multiple times, as well as the USA, Fiji and whatever the hell this French team are. Scotland are a mystery unto all, but now Israel Folau's no longer around to question my flat pass-based sexuality. It's the perfect time to dive back into Scotsexualism. So, how good are Scotland? How are they approaching this World Cup? And what can we expect from them with the still fancied island and fan favourite host nation Japan sat elsewhere in their pool? Because of how prominent he's been, it's easy to forget that the man with a head like an artisan dough ball, Gregor Townsend, has only been operating at test level 2 years. And because it seems such a straightforward, straight-up promotion from his role with Glasgow, it's equally easy to miss the fact that he's doing a completely different job. I touched on this a bit in my video on Warren Gatland, but coaching, club and test rugby are two very different jobs that just happen to exist on the same career path. It's like going from being a teacher to a headmaster. You're used to doing the day-to-day, the planning, the teaching, the marking, the chasing, the being underpaid and undervalued by society, but then you have to step up into a role that's more overseeing and managing both the people under you and the absurd amount of stress you have to deal with now. A club coach is used to having their players in camp 5 or 6 days a week for about 10 months a year. The job is to get the most out of a squad. An international coach has about 15 weeks of contact time per year with their players, pulled from different club environments to join your national side. The job is to select rather than to recruit your men and to make them into a cohesive team capable of competing at the very highest level of the sport. So, having turned down the chance to leave Scotland to take charge of Harlequins, Townsend's coaching career has basically been a straight shot of linear promotions inside the same system. His first game in charge of Scotland was about a month after his last game in charge of Glasgow. With that in mind, it's like he was thrown onto the floor and expected to find his dancing shoes right away, when actually everyone kind of has to fumble to their feet a bit first. This fumbling isn't anything to do with the rugby. Townsend is a fantastic technical coach, he knows exactly how he wants his team to play, and he's obviously capable of getting them to do so. The problem, however, is the rest of it. The stuff that differs from what he learned working with Glasgow. This isn't a criticism. It takes almost every coach a full 4-year cycle to get the measure of test rugby. The only reason Wales are so prepared for the 2019 season, or the All Blacks for the last few World Cups, is because they've been led by coaching teams who've been in place long enough to understand the every idiosyncrasy of test rugby and know how to build a team to peak at a certain time. So whereas some coaches try to mimic the club structure and establish continuity, or some cause chaos to keep their players on their toes, Townsend tinkers. He'll name a squad day 1 and then 3 days later call up 4 new players. If someone has a good game for Worcester on an off week and they have a nan born in Aberdeen, he'll jerk that knee and parachute them into the national team training on Monday morning. Townsend is still working out what he's doing, but his approach is similar to the way he played. It's his own way, with total ignorance of how things are done. Townsend manages off instinct. The only issue for Scotland is these instincts are still developing, and this has led to some unearned gambles backfiring. The squad is being prepared based on how Tooney feels that day, rather than what's necessarily best for the long run. But the longer he's in the job, the better that impulse decision will be for Scotland of the future. Facing a World Cup this early in his development as a test coach means Scotland will be approaching this tournament differently beat the other 7 top seeds. Instead of Japan being the be-all and end-all, a summit of 4 years worth of work for Scotland, this is closer to being a second Six Nations than something they've been targeting ever since Justin Marshall shrieked, "Go, Brody!" back in 2015. Whilst there is a level of future planning, Townsend's focus has always been on the game they're playing in 7 days' time, rather than the 7 they're playing in a year's time. Scotland will be going there to win it. They may even do very well off the sheer talent in the squad, but this isn't their end game, this isn't their big goal. With Townsend set to stay past Japan, it'll be interesting to see if, once he's got a taste of a World Cup, they switch approach and target 2023 the moment they get back. Whilst this might not sound too enticing or exciting, freed up from the shackles of built-up internal pressure, this should actually allow Scotland to just be themselves from the moment they land in Yamahara. And when I say be themselves, I mean be absolutely so alluringly batshit Finsane. I've talked about him a lot on this channel, but then Finn Russell is to Scots sexuals what David Bowie is to all other orientations. Russell is the master of unlocking a defence, probably the best passer of a ball in the world, and more unpredictable than this cabinet jailmate walrus I've long since accepted I'm gonna die alone, hamster doorknob, what, Yoko Ono, pack it up, pack it in, let me begin, I came to win, battle me, that's a sin sentence. However, this only increases the amount of pressure put on Russell's understudy and owner of the world's most footballery haircut, Adam Hastings. A fellow purveyor of mad shit, Hastings has come a long way this season and is beginning to find consistency in his unhinged antics. Perhaps the finest case study of where he's at would be his performance in this year's Pro 14 final. Here we got to see all of Adam and he was very good. His running game is well renowned, his passing is good enough to stand up, perhaps not next to, but nearby in the general vicinity of Finn's slick wrists, but he is still a work in progress. Just because he can throw this impressive a pass doesn't mean he should. Townsend has a clear idea of the kind of player he wants to pick, and so his squad is full of ballers with no room for game management meatball Duncan Weir, who has had a fantastic season for Worcester this year, but he won't be picked for Scotland because his total lack of neck prevents him turning his head to pull a Finn Russell foe out the back style pass. This means it's on Hastings to further develop very quickly. His kicking and his game management are improving, but as the guy likely to be on the bench, it's up to him to become the kind of player who can come on and close out a game. Townsend is very fond of a risk, but Hastings will need to become a safe hand without losing his ability to show great hands. Because Scotland play great attacking rugby, but their major flaw might be that they only play great attacking rugby. This is not a team adept at switching styles. You can score tries without flair, but if you come up against an able defence, it can be hard to secure a win without knowing how to do the tough stuff. I'm not saying Naynek Donkey is the answer, but Townsend has put all his chips in the flashing neon square on the roulette table, and Greg Laidlaw is acting as the only friend who nudges him and says maybe he wants to have a glass of water and leave something to take home for the wife. Because if Scotland are going to be bringing anything home, they're going to have to do it the hard way, with the runner-up in their pool set to play the All Blacks in the quarter-finals. However, even that second slot is far from a done deal, as Scotland's game against Japan on the last day of pool play is one of the most glaring opportunities for an upset in September's 48-game fixture list. The two met at the last World Cup, but the odds there were stacked against Japan. They were playing just 4 days after their famous win over South Africa, with bodies battered by Box, whereas Scotland were fresh as thistles, having not played in 3 weeks. However, this time things are stacked the other way round. Scotland have a 4-day turnaround going into the game, whereas Japan, cashing in on their home team perks, get almost 2 full weeks off after their game against Ireland. I'm not suggesting there's anything underhand going on, but World Rugby have done a spectacular job of levelling the playing field when the main difference between tiers 1 and 2 is so often fitness. That game is the last match of the pool stages and is basically a bonus quarter final to warm us up for the knockouts. Because on the one hand, we know Scotland can score tries past virtually any defence, but on the other, we don't know if they can do everything else yet. This is still a team with growing pains. It's almost like Scotland view themselves as an attacking team, not a complete team. It's kind of like when you're a teenager and you decide that you're a certain sort of person. You're a goth, a gamer, a rugby lad, or whatever. And then everything you do skewers into that. Your sense of identity is external. It's difficult sometimes to come out of that as anything else. It's only once you reach adulthood that you begin to see yourself as something more than the sum of your parts, as a big, messy contradiction rather than an archetype that you feel like you should be. That thing that you identified as, that you called yourself, still is a part of you, but you don't think about it as much anymore. It's not all of you. Every time I say Scotland and Fiji played the best rugby, I'm subconsciously ignoring the All Blacks because the rest of their game is as good as their try scoring. They're an adult team, they're well balanced, their defence is as well developed as their attack. Scotland, on the other hand, are only adult in the sense that Finn Russell's passes are not safe for work. Just as I had to grow up when I finally sat down and told my parents I was Scotsexual, Scotland are being faced with a big rite of passage this autumn. It's a chance for them to show who they are and who they can be in front of the world. Maybe it's not their time yet, but after years of on the one hand and on the other, this could be the moment where Scotland finally come of age. So it's been a busy week or so I might as well get into it. You are probably aware that Israel Folau launched a GoFundMe page about a week or so ago. Anyone that follows my social media saw that I then launched a response one raising money for Stonewall, which is an LGBT charity. And we raised, I think, about 15,000 Australian dollars, just shy of £9,000, which is amazing. It's an amazing thing to have done. I was invited on Breakfast TV in Australia, which was a really odd experience. People eating their breakfast in Australia could see my kitchen. And then I was also on Radio New Zealand. The campaign spread all over. Israel Folau's campaign then got taken down. So yeah, it's been a mad week, and I feel I should probably acknowledge it. Thank you very much to everyone that supported the campaign to send a message to Folau to show that homophobia is not welcome in rugby. It's enormously appreciated. You're all amazing, awesome, wonderful people. So thank you very much for that. The second thing to say is I do have a bit of a cold, so my voice is odd. The third thing to say is that I am very excited, no less, to team up with Find a Player, which is it's an app, it's a startup based in Glasgow, who have just got going. They are an app designed to help it easier for people to play sport, for you to find people nearby, to find a player, as it were, wanting to play the same sport as you. So, for instance, this is a rugby channel. You know, they have all sorts of sports. If you want to play squash or badminton or whatever, football, if you've heard of that, you can do that. But, you know, if you fancy a game of touch, if you fancy a game of sevens, whatever, you can pop onto the app. There's a Squidge Rugby channel. The details are all floating around somewhere if you do want to have a look at it. So you can find other people that like the channel, and you can meet up and you can go, what was that thing with the baking all about, whilst playing touch. So if you fancy doing that, you can head to, as I said, the details are all around here. It's completely free. It's genuinely free. It's an absolute bargain. I can't quite believe that they do such a good service for free. No, but it's a really exciting thing. Unfortunately, it's only available to the UK and Ireland for now. But if you do want to sign up, please head there and please join the Squidge Rugby one, and I'll try and get some events going at some point on there. Otherwise, thanks for watching that. This was part 14 of an ongoing series on every team in the World Cup. So there's obviously 6 more to go. The other 13 are on the channel. If you do want to watch them, please do. If you don't want to watch them, fair enough. You've got plenty of other things to do. And I'll see you soon enough for the next one. Thank you. Bye.